What would you do if your world exploded? The life of a refugee. Most of us watching this will never experience it, but the following outlines just a glimpse of the life of a refugee, transitioning from their homes to camps to the United States. A refugee is someone who has been forced to flee their home country as a result of war, persecution, or natural disaster. Refugees must find their way to a camp on their own, often walking through hundreds of miles of treacherous conditions with nothing but the possessions they can carry. We spoke with Dadaab refugee Dekow Sagar about his personal experiences as a refugee.
If we are being attacked right now, we would run for our life. We will not have an opportunity to think what do we need to take or what do we need to leave. In some cases, that's how family get split during the Civil War, because let us say dad was at work and mom was, at the farm and kids were home, and then the attack happens. So people will just flee helter-skelter. For us though, after we are being looted, we kind of like run helter-skelter for that day, but then we regroup the following day and we were able to find each other, and that's how we were able to, start our journey from our village to Kenya. For us, it probably took 30 to 45 days. That is probably 350 to 400 miles on foot.
Refugee camps are overcrowded and underfunded. Nothing is guaranteed at a camp except a small ration of food.
People live in a tent in the refugee camp. So, for instance, a family of 11 people can share one tent. That is, you can understand in terms of like privacy and how difficult it is. In general, it's not the most ideal place for any human being to live, but I think because refugee camps often is a little bit safer than where people came from, so the environment can be very hostile, but at least it is not unsafe. It was 10 kilometers squared, and that one time I think it was a home to 500,000 population. That's extremely congested, and for refugees, when I lived there back 10 years ago, if they go beyond that 10 kilometers, they often get arrested. Some students got an opportunity, I think, to study outside the camp. Medical, and I think those are probably the two main reasons why a refugee will be allowed to travel out of the refugee camp. I would say less than 1% of the population will be lucky enough to be given or allowed to travel. I think at once people used to call an open prison. In general, we have like 21 plus million refugees with refugee status worldwide. We have another significant number of internal displaced people who have been displaced by civil war within their country, but also live within the boundaries and the demarcation line of their native country. So in total, we're looking like a population of 65 million plus. So out of that, I think less than 1% gets an opportunity to be considered for resettlement into a third world country.
Refugees can apply for resettlement when they enter a camp, a process that requires background checks, interviews, native country cross-references, and health tests. The United States does an initial screening of applicants at the camps, followed by more background checks, interviews, and health tests. If all of this checks out and a refugee qualifies, they are then allowed to travel to the United States. The International Organization for Migration provides refugees with a travel loan for transportation costs, with repayment required within 9 months. A caseworker from a resettlement agency will be assigned to help a refugee settle. A caseworker is only assigned to help for 90 days, in which time doctors, school enrollment, employment, and housing must be secured. These are just a few of the things that a caseworker helps new refugees arrange. After the 90-day period, refugees are considered to be independent and will no longer receive contracted support from the resettlement agency and caseworker.
That is when you have to be technically self-sufficient, and we all know that no one can be someone who has gone such traumatic event cannot be self-sufficient in 90 days. For refugees, it is quite overwhelming, it is quite isolating, especially if you have to navigate a system that most Americans who are educated will struggle to navigate. The culture shock will be extremely overwhelming. There were days that I hope if I had the means to go back to the Dadaab refugee camp, that I would certainly go back to the refugee camp because it was too much for me to handle. But luckily, I could not easily go back, and over time I kind of adjusted and figured things out. first of all, it's gonna be like quite happy the first few 90 days, and then it will be quite depressing for quite long time, and then you will adjust to life, and then you will figure out things, and you get more comfortable, and that's when people start now kind of appreciate the whole process. It's kind of like sowing seeds, because if you're a farmer, if you sow seeds today, you don't expect to harvest them tomorrow. And if you don't have enough food in your reserve, you may go through starvation before you harvest next time. So that's how I kind of look. You will go some difficult transition for sure, but eventually it will pay off.